Hi, Chris Kuzmo here. We're learning more about Python, and today we're going to learn about variables, assignment, and the identity of variables, and maybe one or two other things if we have time. Here I am in the Python console in REPL, and let's zoom in a little bit and type in a basic thing. I'm going to do x equals 0. Okay, well, so what does that mean? What that means is if I type in x, then 0 gets displayed as a result of it being evaluated. Now let's compare that to y. Y is another symbol I could type in. Oops, I actually previously defined y. Let's try z, and I get an error. Z is not defined. Now, I actually previously defined y as this container, this thing with square brackets. And if I identify y, I can do that by typing ID with y inside the parentheses. And that gives me a big long number, which is a little bit scary. Let's compare that to the ID of x. Let's just look at ID of x. We see actually the numbers are the same for the first bit, 1, 3, 9, 7, 1. And it changes after the 1, the 7, 1. So it's not critical that you like memorize anything about the numbers here other than just to note that they're different, but they're not completely different. Now, let's try to set y equal to x and see what happens. Now, if we evaluate y by typing y and hitting enter, we get 0. If we identify y, we see that the identity of x here, that sequence of numbers, is exactly the same as the identity of y. Okay, so if we want to compare x to y, we can look at their identities. All right. Now, let's set y back equal to that empty container. And let's do x equals y. And let's evaluate x by entering x, and we get the empty container. Fantastic. So now the question is, how close are x and y identified with one another at this point? If I modify y, for example, if I do an append operation, then when I evaluate y, it contains 1. What's happened to x? X also contains 1. Interesting. Let's see if I make x equal to a container that contains 1, which looks like I've made it the same thing as y. But now if I look at the identity of x and I look at the identity of y, the numbers are different. The numbers that indicate their identities are different. That's because even though this is a container that contains 1, and this is a container that contains 1, y here is shown as being a container that contains 1. In one case, we're saying that x and y are the same container, and in another case, they're saying they're different containers which happen to contain the same things, and we can compare them using the comparison operator, x double equals y. It says true, even though the ID for x is not the same as the ID for y. What this means is if we have different IDs, but the same contents, then the two variables evaluate to being equal. But it also means that if I modify x, so I put a 2 into x, if I evaluate x, I see x has 1, 2. But if I evaluate y, y still has the 1. If I compare x to y, they're no longer considered to be equal.